I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the film She Taught Love. We are joined today by actor Arsema Thomas, screenwriter, producer, and actor Darrell Britt-Gibson, and director Nate Edwards. And Darrell, I wanted to start with you and talking about the way that you've written the script for this story, because it's very much there is this element of two people that meet and fall in love and the diagnosis that she receives on her health, but it feels like that is just a part of their story, and it really allows for all the layers and complexities of two people meeting and who they are in the world to each other and as individuals. And so I just wanted to ask about the way that you wanted to build that as the way that you were telling the story.
Oh, well, first we'll have to say, how are you doing today? I feel like nobody asked
Wonderfully.
that kind of
Thank
question.
you. I appreciate
Good.
it.
Where in
Yes.
the world are you?
I am in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay,
Yay.
Yeah.
BK, stand up. Um, yeah, I think in sort of crafting this story, it was really about trying to, because I think that there's like this, there can be a desire to create characters who are so polar opposite
Mm.
that it's almost like, like the meet cute where like, they like bump, the superhero and then somebody's like glasses are falling off their face and they're like, whoa, they're never gonna be in love. But I think that like to create sort of this like these two characters who clearly like have their own worlds and but bringing them together didn't feel like something that you're like, well, that's just never gonna happen, right?
Mhm.
And it was sort of like trying to find that balance of like what is it, what are the things that you can sort of differentiate between Molly and between Frank. And so like, they are both successful, and sort of they both do have their own things going, but it's sort of like you can see that like Frank's armor is very damaged, and he's sort of in need of somebody who can sort of like put it back together, but at the same time, he still does have armor on, and I think that allowing sort of those sort of spaces where you can see like, oh, there is like a little bit, like I do get why, but it doesn't feel so out of the realm of possibility,
Mm.
that you're like, I just don't buy it, because you have to buy that this could be like a forever love, and so you have to sort of, find that sort of space in which that they both can exist, but in a space that feels healthy for both of them, even when it doesn't look like it is on the surface,
Mm.
and understanding that when things do go awry, like if they do find themselves back to each other, like you would feel as an audience, like I get it.
It's deserved.
Yeah, it's a deserved, yeah,
I
reconciliation.
love that answer. Arsema, I also wanted to ask you about the way that you built out Molly as a character, because Daryl's sprinkled so many little details into the script that give you
Mhm.
this inclination as to who she is. It's like she loves Star Wars. She loves the idea of the concept of the universe being more than the world that she lives in. So it's the
Mhm.
little things that she loves, like Beyonce, but also the way that she views the world as a whole. And so I wanted to ask about the way that you went through the script and took all those details to really build out who you felt she was going to be to you.
So, I mean, it was like a treasure trove, the script, because there's the stuff that's like he explicitly wrote, there's the stuff of like the way that she reacts to people, what triggers her. So I was able to, I'm like, I sometimes go back, it was a whole notebook's worth for like Molly of just everything that I could possibly fill this like skeleton up with so that she's a fleshed out human being. And it's also just, I mean, usually that's the actor's job, but it's so amazing to have a writer who's so intentional about how he wants this woman to be portrayed, for her to be just as complex and nuanced as any woman. And it made my job easier because I am just as every which way possible as she is. There's so many parts that reminded me of myself, from her relationship to her father to her work ethic and what she uses that to kind of hide away from. The fact that she hates being vulnerable, and then being able to then work and investigate why. It was one of the like joyous experiences to kind of like be able to meet Molly. And it's strange because even during this press process, I'm like figuring out more and more things for her, which I don't know what to do with that. But yeah, it's been she's one of my favorite characters, and she's given me a lot to think about, and a lot that I'm going to take on with me as well.
That's so wonderful. And Nate, I wanted to ask you about the way that you framed these two characters in the story, because I really love the framing that you use. There's so many different angles and, ways that you very specifically use close up to create this real sense of intimacy and bring the audience into their relationship with each other. But then you also are taxed with the idea of, when are they close to each other? When are they really getting to know each other? When are they pulling back a little bit? And so I was really curious about how you kind of set up your framing to tell this intimate love story with the two of them.
Absolutely. I felt like both characters were always searching. It just they went about it in a different way. Frank was loose and spastic and, kind of unruly with how he went about searching for what it is that he needed. And Molly was I'm gonna take the bulls by the horn. And I really played on that with how I wanted to frame them. So the camera was always searching for Frank. It's the same way like Frank is always searching for this world. He seems a step behind or a little step too fast. Molly was always centered. She was always focused in what she did. And just wanted, me and my DP, Justin Deary, we really wanted to take these basic filmmaking principles, right? And make the story to where you could tell the difference between these two worlds. You could tell a separation between Frank and Molly whenever they're first meeting, because there's no over the shoulders. They're all in singles, until they get comfortable with each other. So little things, small things of just basic filmmaking, taking it back to, the root of how we can tell a story really well, without too many, situations going on.
That's a technical director.
Absolutely. I can tell you how it's spelled.
It's in the transcript.
It was important for me to, though they lived in the same universe, give them their own worlds, that they could exist in.
Yeah, it's beautifully shot. And Arsema, going back to something that you were just touching upon with the way that your character sometimes hides away from herself, there's that moment where she talks about how she feels like she's buried herself so much in her work that she kind of forgot to build a world outside of it. And so I was really interested in how you built this arc within her, of this journey that she's going on with herself, and really discovering a lot of elements of who she is if she takes that time for herself.
I mean, building out her arc was, I think like it helped because we kind of did it together. We came up with the ending point of this love, or like her doing and studying astrophysics, and like that being the thing that she really, really wants to do. Because I was thinking like Molly lives so much of her life for everybody else. I had to think, in a world where she could do something selfishly, what's the most selfish thing that she could ever do? And like to just go back to school and learn the thing that she actually loves, without a care of like how it will gain her capital or what her career would look like. And so based on like her love of Star Wars, her creating Astronova, it made sense that like she would want to truly like technically understand what's out there. So once that came, it was really easy to then work backwards from that. Trying to then recognize what is her relationship with her friend Sam, with Frank, how it changes her relationship with her parents when she lets them in, and when she kind of feels like she's trying to safeguard them, and how that differentiates between her father and her mother. Also just her relationship when she's like in her office. I think there was something really, really helpful with the design of the whole entire space, that really imbued a reality in every minute that like Nate called action, because she felt just, yeah. We did a lot of work. That's all I can say. It was a lot of fun work that had really, really good bones from the original script.
Yeah. I mean, and Darrell, it almost feels like for Frank that he, in meeting someone, he kind of understands, I want to be a better version of myself and I want to fix some of the things that I've maybe just tried to push down a little bit in the past. And so similarly was very interested in the journey that you wanted him to go on and kind of where you wanted him to ultimately land towards the end of the story.
Yeah, I think it's when you meet characters. A friend of mine who's a screenwriter, the one of the best pieces of advices I've ever been given is he said that like in life, like in film, like characters go from A to Z, and he's like in reality, like a film is like a couple hours. He's like you can only take them from like A to 8.1, you know. So stop trying to get to Z, you know. And I think that with Frank, it's like you meet him at A, but like the progression of sort of who he is and sort of where we see him towards the end of the film is like his 8.1, and it's still drastically different from his A. And I think that that leaves this idea of like there's room to grow. You know, I think that I never want to write characters whose stories are finished after the film is over. You know, I want to be very intentional about like sort of like the idea of expansion and the growth of like and letting your mind sort of run with where you think that they are and where you might see them next, you know? So like Frank is far from a complete person or complete character. And that's sort of like what I wanted to, you know, convey with all of the characters in some aspect, that like you don't really get to the finish line. You just like, you know, get to the next starting block, you know?
I was going to ask all three of you about really finding the tone of this film, because one of the things that I appreciated in watching it is it never feels like it leans into being overly sentimental. It allows itself to live in the reality of these characters and the world that they're in. And so you have these aspects of romance, but also drama, and then you allow for lightness and humor. And it kind of almost feels like the tone of the film is very set by Molly as a central character, because she wouldn't allow herself to be overly sentimental, but will be vulnerable. And so I was just curious about how you all collectively found that myriad of tones and emotions for the film.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, from the writing standpoint, I think so much of like, I think that life, I don't really ever like, you're not writing comedy, it's just that life is funny, you know? So like if a character like is funny, it's just that like, it's just funny because life is funny, instead of like trying, and I think that like life is like, it's emotional and it can be sort of a dark space and you can feel that, but it's also like they always say, like you like people are like at the end of a funeral, there are people who are laughing because you're just remembering something, a story, or you're remembering something. And I think that we all can remember being at like a funeral and like you're like, I laughed at, like, not at, you know what I mean, and a point in it, because it's like life is funny. There's something funny in everything. Instead of trying to like write towards an emotion, it was really trying to write just sort of like allowing life to be what that is. So instead of saying that, oh, like this character cracks this joke, it's like just you get the right actor to say the thing and it's gonna just be funny, you know? And that's sort of like putting the pieces together, like the director who can sort of guide this person there, and then you get the right actors to play this part, to do this thing, and not writing towards something, but just allowing it to be. And those are like my favorite films. You know, like Before Sunrise is like one of my inspirations for this film. And it's like, it's just such a beautiful film about like two people existing in a world that's bigger than them, but like they feel like giants in their world. And I just wanted to feel that in this film. So you know, that was sort of my goal with it. But I'll let these people tell you how I didn't accomplish that. No.
Yeah, we had to do a lot of work to undo everything he did.
Get off of the.
They tried to edit me out of the whole film. It's really
was
6.5 hours. But we ended at 1 hour and 45 because of how bad I am. But go ahead.
I mean, I think a lot of the tone, you're right. There is a characteristic in Molly that kind of keeps a lot of things at bay. I was talking to my aunt a lot because I realized that there was a lot of similarity between Molly's story and hers. She had started dating my now uncle and quickly got diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was so interesting to discuss it with her because she was saying that she did not want her diagnosis to be the third party in her relationship. So that was something that she kind of kept in the back burner because she's like, I want you to know me as me, and whatever happens with this, but this is the relationship. And I think that was something that I dialed into with Molly. I think also, like Nate and I we discussed about like animal studies for her, and like decided on like this cat, like feline energy. And you'll notice like cats have this, they come to you and then they pull away. And that duality, I think, helped kind of in the nonverbal moments also push this balance of tone. So it didn't get too fuzzy and it didn't get too cold. It kind of lived in that, that perfect temperature of porridge. If you so will.
Who knew porridge would make
Lady
it to the end?
Dudberry, would you like a cup of
Miss
porridge?
Dudberry!
Oh my
Lady
God.
Dudberry.
I'm never putting it down.
I think, from a performance writing standpoint, like Arsema said, they did the work. Everybody that, came to set really did the work to make sure that they understood their character and they knew where it could push it. And, I just had to give them a little... I can tell you how to spell that too.
Another technical term.
The director's commentary is going to be amazing.
Also,
It is. Stay tuned.
Also, the DP and I were really strict with how we wanted to approach it. I didn't want any handheld shots. There always had to be a sense of movement. How we moved, wanted it to be in a way that didn't make the camera feel as if it was like a part of it, but just this constant motion that adds a little bit of life, a little bit of texture to what it is that we were doing. So I think that strictness and sticking to our plan and our vision of how we wanted to do it, even in the faces of 2 hours to get 6 scenes or all kind of craziness that we ran up to, in the end created the tone, for sure. Yeah.
It's great. And Arsema, lastly for you, there's that moment where she's talking very early on about her love of astrophysics and the idea that she doesn't believe that everything that happens on Earth is the only part of you that exists. And I thought that was so interesting in terms of how she considers the idea of her own potential mortality and was interested in how that shaped things for you with her.
I mean, I think that's a moment that I realize how brave she is, because that's a really bold thing to say. And that comes with a lot of reflection. And I had to personally get there for myself so that I could understand how she got there. Because that comes also from a place of like solitude. Because I think when you have gone against a lot, it's very easy to think that like, to get a microscopic view, to think that everything will be the end of the world. And in reality, when you zoom out and then you keep zooming out, it's like, there's this really great Paul Sagan quote, and Maya Angelou makes a poem about it. But it's about the fact that like, there was the first image of Earth you see is like this just pale blue dot. And that's what Paul Sagan quotes it as. And I think that was a really easy way to get into it, of when you realize how big everything is and how small we are, you can't help but find the same conclusion, that this just can't be everything when there is so much else happening. Yeah.
It's a beautiful answer. And I loved hearing you all talk so much about the film. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
you.